Full election headquarters. Here's Fred Childers with This Week in Louisiana Politics.
And good Sunday morning to you. I'm Fred Childers. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. A legislative committee grills the Orleans Parish District Attorney over his moves to allow some inmates to be released earlier. Some say he's let too many people out too quickly. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us a look into the oversight hearing.
The district attorney of Orleans Parish defended his actions with these resentencings, but there were many people pushing back on him, saying that they're upset that some of these criminals are now back on the streets. The hearing was called after an uproar on social media alerted lawmakers to Orleans resentencing far outpacing the rest of the state. District Attorney Jason Williams says that he's working with his Civil Rights Division to correct some case mistakes.
A lot of things have tried to compress complicated legal hearings into tweets.
And some say there was a rush in these cases before a new law required the Attorney General to be alerted to resentencings.
There are restrictions on our behavior as a prosecutor, and that applies in both directions.
The Attorney General is not taking a stance on if Williams violated the law. Some lawmakers took issue with allowing resentencings for people who were convicted under non-unanimous juries. In other cases, victims' families were against the idea of release with updated sentences.
Whether that district attorney is now stepping into the shoes of the governor and trying to basically concede an error that has been denied over and over and over again by the court, that's where I would have a concern.
Some lawmakers say if there's no possibility of innocence, inmates should be left in jail.
Some of your maybe more conservative colleagues believe that I have leaned too heavily on correcting the wrongs of the past. My office has been measured, it's been transparent, and I've listened to the community.
Lawmakers say future legislation could tighten the post-conviction relief process or put more oversight on district attorneys. The chairman of the committee says that he expects to have more hearings in the future once they get more of those court documents. At the Capitol for your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
A new law that allows for teachers to get supplemental pay for doing duties outside the normal scope of their job is causing some controversy across the state. Lawmakers heard from agencies that represent teachers. They said duties like running a student club, working concessions at a sporting event, or having to return to campus for faculty meetings should have been captured in his new law. But they say some districts are expanding teacher contracts to include these duties so they wouldn't qualify for supplemental pay.
Being able to be compensated for other jobs that we're doing in the school system, that would make the world of a difference to individuals like us and so many other educators across the state of Louisiana. You have educators who are single parents. You have educators who are taking care of their families.
A representative for the School Board Association says the new law had to quickly be implemented and that there is not a one-size-fits-all for this extra pay rule. Lawmakers asked to see how districts across the state are complying with the law as they dig further into the issue. A new lottery system will determine which homeowners will receive grants for a fortified roof, which strengthens homes against severe storms. Jordan Lippincott has the details on that state program.
Starting September 18th, eligible homeowners who register for the next round of grants through the Louisiana Fortified Homes program will be entered into a lottery. This way, everyone gets a fair chance.
And it's going to be 300 grant applications that go through on this round. And we're also going to have 200 people that get notified that they're on a wait list, so that if people drop off, we can just directly backfill those 300 with folks who are already on a wait list.
This round will be open to those who live in the state's coastal parishes. Other eligibility requirements include a homestead exemption and an insurance policy with wind coverage. The fortified roof standard was created by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety.
Essentially, the fortified roof is a stronger roof. It uses tougher materials and it adds some elements like ring shank nails, which are harder to come out. It tamps down the edge of the roof so that the roof is harder to blow off in an event like a hurricane.
In the last year, 1,300 fortified roof grants have been issued.
So the goal is to help the homeowner who has the fortified roof reduce their loss from a hurricane, but also to increase the resiliency of the entire state of Louisiana. So we're going to help people on the individual level get their roof stronger and get insurance discounts for doing that. But we're also going to help make our market more attractive to the insurance companies who are considering coming down here to write or who are already here writing and may write more business.
Jordan Lippincott, WGNO News.
All right, a candidate for Louisiana's much talked about 6th Congressional District gets a major endorsement. We'll tell you about it next.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Congressman Troy Carter joins a number of other lawmakers in urging funding be put into the Disaster Relief Fund. On August 7th, FEMA announced that the DRF had become depleted and started redirecting money from other programs to respond to the most urgent life-saving needs. Though FEMA can still respond to immediate disasters, this will result in stalled payments for past disasters and delays in future disaster planning measures. The agency projects a deficit of over $6 billion by the end of the year. Former Governor John Bel Edwards endorses State Senator Cleo Fields for Louisiana's 6th Congressional District. In a statement, Edwards says, in part, Cleo has dedicated his life to public service and has been a champion for the people of the state. Fields faces Republican Elbert Guillory and Democrats Quentin Anderson, Wilkin Jones Jr., and Peter Williams. As the race to the White House continues, both campaigns are getting more specific about their economic policies, each candidate laying out their vision for families' pocketbooks over the next 4 years. Washington correspondent Trevor Shirley has the story.
Recent polling shows most voters' major concerns still center on the economy, potentially making that a make-or-break issue for both campaigns. This week, both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump laid out their economic pitches to voters.
Part of my plan is we will expand the tax deduction for startups to $50,000. My plan will make our tax code more fair while also prioritizing investment and innovation.
The former president, speaking to business leaders Thursday, also promised to increase tariffs, which he argued would help pay for seemingly unrelated issues like the cost of child care.
I am promising low taxes, low regulations, low energy costs, low interest rates, secure borders, low crime, and surging incomes for citizens.
Mr. Trump said increasing tariffs on foreign goods would not cost consumers more.
I'm here today to lay out my plan to rescue our country from this nightmare and to bring back to its citizens the American dream, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before.
Vice President Harris also called for a 28% capital gains tax for corporations and high earners.
Let us be clear. Billionaires and big corporations must pay their fair share in taxes.
That 28% tax is significantly less than the 40% proposed by President Joe Biden. Recent polling shows the economy remains a top concern for voters, even as most major metrics show the economy remains strong. And both candidates are spending the weekend preparing to face off against one another in their first debate that's scheduled to happen this Tuesday. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
Our own Shannon Heck sits down with Congressman Garrett Graves to talk about the one last goal he wants to accomplish before leaving office. That's next. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Today I'm joined by Congressman Garrett Graves. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You bet. Great to be back.
And so you've only got a handful of months left in this term that you're doing, and you're really making a big push to help people with their Social Security benefits with the pension offset and windfall elimination provisions. So those are pretty complicated things.
They are.
Could you first just break down what those things are a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, look, let me just say, first of all, we do have a few months left, and we certainly don't have any intention to just put it on cruise control. We've got a lot of work to do, and one of the biggest issues that we hear from people in South Louisiana is this issue having to do with Social Security penalties. And this is for anyone who has worked in public service, like working as a police officer, a teacher, in a public school system, a firefighter, working for a parish or state government. Most of them don't realize it until they go to retire, but they end up getting a discount or a cut in their Social Security benefits. So you may get a statement from the Social Security Administration that says you're going to get, and I'll make up a number, $1,800 a month when you retire, and you go and retire, and you may actually only get $800 a month because of this penalty. And so we've had people that have come to us and said, look, I actually quit my job and had to go back to work because I realized that this penalty came in and I didn't have enough money. So it's unjust. It's taking money, I'll say it again, unjustly from those who worked in public service in some of these jobs like teachers and police officers. We have a bill to fix it, and so we're pushing really hard to make sure that we get that done by the end of the year.
I remember there was a field hearing last year, and a woman who was a teacher was married to someone who got a pension, and when she retired, she got penalized because of her former husband's pension. So it seems unfair, especially our teachers and firefighters who are the ones who are serving our community. Why was this originally created?
Yeah, so Shannon, you're exactly right in correcting me that this does affect widows and spouses as well. It penalizes everyone even connected to a police officer, teacher, and others. But what happened is in 1970s and before, there was actually a scenario where folks were potentially getting double paid or double counting the way retirement was calculated. So there was a need to come in and perfect the system, but what happened is they did a massive overcorrection in the late 1970s and early 80s. And so we have had people that literally for over 40 years now have been penalized. The Social Security Administration has stolen, or I use the word embezzled, tens of billions of dollars from people like teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other public workers that, as you mentioned, I mean, these are people that are critical to our community. They're often underpaid and often overworked. And only to find out later that adding insult to injury with a cut in their retirement. So we're fixing this overcorrection that was done decades ago. And our legislation today is the second most co-sponsored bill in all of Congress out of over 10,000 bills, because we've been able to educate people. They understand the ridiculous situation, and folks are with us and trying to fix it.
And so there is so much support. I know you've been trying to pass this for a couple of years now. So why has it stalled out? Why can't we get it to the floor?
Well, so look, the rest of the story is that, I mentioned a minute ago that literally tens of billions of dollars have been stolen or siphoned off from some of these retirees or soon to be retirees. And so in order to fix it, you've got to restore the tens of billions of dollars. And you've got to look at it in the larger context, and that the Social Security Trust Fund today is projected to be insolvent somewhere around 2034, 2035. And so you're taking a massive problem and potentially adding more complexity or more challenges to it. But look, let's be clear. If you go and fix this, you may have a small impact on when the trust fund becomes insolvent, but Congress has an obligation to fix this larger issue of solvency, or making sure that the Social Security Trust Fund will be around for decades to come for those people that have paid into the system. And so this does not add a significant additional challenge to the larger issue of just making sure the trust fund stays in the black, stays solvent, has appropriate money to pay future retirees.
And I know you and some of your colleagues wrote a letter to try to get it discharged. Has there been any movement on that?
So we have begun laying the groundwork, and what happens under a discharge is basically you circumvent all of the regular order process and you force it directly to the House floor for a vote. We've been working with the committees trying to get everything resolved, unable to get to an agreement that makes sense. So we have a bipartisan discharge petition that we'll officially be filing on Tuesday. And that will begin the steps where we get 218 signatures, which is a majority of House members, that then forces it for a House vote, which we expect will happen sometime in September, most likely. And if we can get our signatures in order, and then that would send it over to the Senate by the end of the year, and hopefully get this to the president's desk and get this long-standing issue finally resolved.
Right, you guys only have a few months left in this term of Congress, and so is there really enough time to get this all done, especially since I know there's another government shutdown kind of looming at the end of this month? Can this be tacked on to a budget bill?
Yeah, so great question. So look, we have been really thinking through the calendar. No one had any desire to do this in a, sort of forceful way like we're moving right now, but we also looked at the calendar and said, look, if we can't reach a negotiation or a consensus by September, we're going to have to go this more aggressive route. And so it wasn't our desired pathway, but we knew based on the calendar that if we got to September and didn't have an agreement, that we were going to have to go ahead and pull the chute and take this maneuver. And so we do have enough time. It was intentional and part of the strategy all along that if we were unable to get an agreement by now, that this is the path we would take.
And so can you really just kind of hit how this is exactly hurting our families, especially our older generations?
Yeah.
Social Security is a large issue that we all know about, that many people have ideas about how to fix, but why should we fix this before the larger insolvency?
Yeah, let me just lay out the scenario here. So let's say that you and I both worked as security guards, and we worked for the same company, we got paid the same amount of money, and we worked the same dates. Said another way, we paid the exact same money in the Social Security Trust Fund for the 20 years that we worked there. After 20 years, I said, look, I'm out. I'm going to have to go help family and do things at the house. You said, I'm going to go become a sheriff's deputy. And so you do 10 more years of that. Now, keep in mind, we paid the same amount into the trust fund. When each of us go to retire, and if we do it on the same date, my benefits from the Social Security Administration may be $1,500 a month. Even though you paid the same amount into the trust fund over the same days, you may only get $600. And so you can imagine having that massive monthly reduction in benefits. It has a big impact on your ability to retire, not to mention your ability to make ends meet in retirement. And so the reason it has such a big impact on families across Louisiana is that we do have some of the highest percentages of retirees impacted by this in the country. Other states like Ohio and California also have very high percentages. But at the end of the day, this impacts the families, it impacts the widows and spouses, it ends up delaying retirement, it forces people to stay in the workforce much longer than in some cases physically they should be doing, or health-wise they should be doing. And so because Louisiana is one of the most impacted states in the country, this has been a big issue for us, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to get this fixed once and for all by the end of the year. In regard to the larger issue with the Social Security Trust Fund, look, you're right. Congress has an obligation to do that. But this does not, you can't say, well, we're just going to keep stealing from this select population of people, continue discriminating against this select population of people, and because we don't have enough money to pay retirees. You've got to fix the Social Security issue writ large. You've got to fix that larger problem no matter what. And you can't justify continuing to steal money from police officers, teachers, and others. Look, if this were happening in the private sector, this is called embezzling and people would go to jail for it. Just because it's Congress, they can't suddenly just rename it budgeting. That's not okay. You're stealing from people.
And, this is your last, go around for this. I'm not saying you'll never be in Congress again, but for right now. So why is this essentially the last hill that you're choosing to die on? Why this issue?
Well, look, we've got, we had an agenda of a few years of legislation that we were anticipating having time to do. And of course, we announced we're not running again, so we had to compress everything very quickly. We've got issues on restoring the coast of Louisiana. We have some energy bills we're doing. We have this one. We have duplication of benefits from the 2016 flood. We're pushing a lot of issues, but look, bottom line is we've taken the issues that are priorities in our district, things where we have so much progress progress and momentum that I believe we truly can get into the end zone on these issues by the end of the year. I don't want to get in a situation where somebody new comes in and they have to start all over from scratch on these issues. We are in the most powerful position we have ever been on this bill in its 40-plus year history, from many Louisiana delegation members that have tried to do this for decades, and I don't want to squander this opportunity. So we're going to maximize it, and yeah, I'm going to die on this hill because it's the right thing to do, and because it's absolutely unjust in what's happening to these people that are having their money stolen.
Well, Congressman, I really appreciate your insight, and we're going to be watching to see if that ends up on the House floor. Thank you for coming on.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
All right, looking ahead to the coming week, on Monday at the Capitol, the Fire Protection and Construction Code Task Force meets at 10:30. On Tuesday, the House and Governmental Affairs Committee meets at 10:30 also at the Capitol. And on Friday, the House Appropriations Committee will meet at 9 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay informed, and I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.